Hi, I'm Karen Henderson, and I am sitting in today for my friend and host of the 01581, Shelby Marshall. I will be joined by our regular recurring guest, Christy Williams, our town manager, and a discussion about the MBTA communities with the chair of our planning board and the director of planning for the town. Glad you can join us. This is the 01581. Let's talk. Welcome to the show. I am joined by our weekly guest, Christy Williams, our town manager. Christy, welcome.
Good morning.
What do you have for us today? I know you have a lot because we were at your all-day budget meeting covering that that forum last Thursday.
Yep.
So, and with town meeting coming up, what do you have to tell everyone about?
Sure. So we are deep into the budget. I know on the show in the past few weeks we've talked about the development of that budget and the fact that it's due on December 21st. So that document is fully available and has been since that date on the town's website. But we've been doing a lot of presentations since then, including the budget hearing last week, and then which I think they can access at Westborough TV.
That's right.
And then also the all-day budget summit, which is there's a recap of the budget, and then the some of the larger departments. So both of our chiefs, our school superintendent, DPW director, and this year our conservation director and community development director all took part in that, which was an all-day meeting last Thursday. So our budget summit. But I would definitely encourage folks to engage in the budget process. As you know, we talk about it at the select board meetings and the finance committee meetings. We're facing a significant increase this year, but there are a lot of unknowns still. So we're waiting to hear on our insurance, for example. Certainly our debt is a huge unknown in terms of our borrow and what percentage we're going to get there. So lots to pay attention to.
Right. You mentioned, and we do have on Westborough TV, so your public budget hearing, which was last Tuesday.
Yes.
I need the date on that.
I think it was the 23rd.
That was the 23rd.
January 23rd, yeah.
And then on the 25th, you had that all-day summit,
Right.
and that's just another place where you kind of get into a little more detail on a lot of those aspects of the budget.
Right.
And that was an 8-hour meeting, maybe a little more than that we covered. So it's just a really good way for people, sometimes it's like, well, try to follow along, and there's a lot to follow. Mm-hmm. But those two dates from last week will have a lot of information in them for people. So it is really nice that you can kind of go back if you want to watch it on YouTube and do it in 1.5 speed, you can. You can jump to different parts of the meeting to see the different departments. About how many articles are we at?
So we're at 33 articles. Okay. That's the second version of the annual town meeting warrant. That's also available on our website. Excuse me. So that's still in draft until the board closes the warrant, which they'll do at their second meeting in February. I believe it's the 27th, the fourth Tuesday.
Okay. And another way for people to pay attention, we cover all the advisory finance committee meetings. Those are usually Monday and Thursday nights. Right. And each of the many of the groups looking for their articles to be approved will go in front of the AFC. Right. So that's another way to kind of pay attention to if there's a particular thing you're interested in from that warrant. The AFC kind of churns through all of it over the next month. Yeah, and typically I expect that the school department will go back to the AFC for more presentations. The fire department, police department, DPW, those presentations were fully presented last week at the budget summit. But I would encourage folks to reach out to me or to any of the department heads that have an article or a budget and ask questions. This is really the time to do it. Right, absolutely. Yeah. All right, great. So. Well, that's good to know, and a little homework for people at home. That's right. One of the busiest people I know, Christy Williams. I'm so glad she can join us, and we are going to be right back with Mark Silverberg and Jenny Gingras to talk about the MBTA communities. Stay with us. Welcome back. I am joined by my guests today, the chair of the planning board, Mark Silverberg, and our Director of Planning for the town of Westborough, Jenny Gingras. And we are going to be talking about things that people might have heard about, the MBTA communities, the Housing Choice Act, some recent legislation from the state that Westborough will be working on coming into compliance with. And so welcome to Mark and Jenny. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Karen.
It would be great to just give people an overview. I think people have heard a little bit. There have been articles in the Globe. It's been on the news. But a little bit of an overview of what this is about would be great.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let Jenny do the overview, but just so people are aware, we do have an article on town meeting that will come up on this, and this is why we're trying to get information out to everybody to let everyone know what this means for the town. So I'll let Jenny launch into the nitty-gritty of it, but it's kind of an important zoning change for us.
Absolutely. All right, great, Jenny. Let everybody know what this is about.
Okay. So the state has added a new section to the Zoning Act, which is Chapter 40A, and you'll hear it called Section 3A of that chapter. And essentially it's requiring towns, 177 towns in Massachusetts, to comply with multifamily zoning requirements. So essentially allow for multifamily zoning to be allowed by right in the communities rather than not allowed at all or through a special permit process.
Okay. And again, those are the communities that are MBTA communities.
Yes. And Westborough is considered a commuter rail community because we do have the train, the MBTA train, over on Fisher Street. So that is how we are classified, and that makes us have to comply with the Zoning Act.
Yeah, so there's over 100, there's 177 communities affected by this law, whether it be a town like Newton with high-speed rail, or I guess I'm not sure that's high-speed, but the commuters would argue differently, but or even adjacent communities like Shrewsbury that don't have a T-stop still have to comply with this law. There's just different standards depending on your level of MBTA service.
Right. And there's deadlines to comply with this, which is important to note, and we can get into that a little further into the discussion, but our requirement is to comply by December of this year, so December of 2024, because of our classification.
Okay. And that's why we put it on the spring town warrant, so that if there is any, assuming we pass this at town meeting, it has to go to the Attorney General for approval. So we wanted to leave a little time before the end of the year to make sure that we didn't cut it too close to the deadline. It still gives us fall town meeting if we have to, for any reason, make revisions.
Okay, so talk about what does it mean to comply? Mm-hmm. So, we have to comply with this, and that means what for us in Westborough?
Yeah, so we have to allow multifamily zoning by right. So we have to allow multifamily to be built by right. However, we can still go through the site plan review process, which doesn't allow us to prohibit the use. It just allows us to regulate the use. Okay. So it would still have to go through a public hearing process through the planning board. They would look at safety, health standards, things like parking, transportation, even aesthetics, landscaping, screening, how it fits into that parcel, but they can't prohibit the use.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And the zone has to be 50 acres minimum.
Okay.
Okay. A certain percentage has to be within a half a mile of the T station. We can, and we did, in fact, as we get further into the zones, we broke it up into 3 zones for our purposes. But a large portion of that is near the T station, very similar to what we have in our transit village zoning, but that zoning was special permit, and this is by right. So that's an important distinction.
Okay. So the article on the town meeting warrant is to change that zoning. Is that what our
No, we're actually just doing an overlay.
Just an overlay, okay.
We're going to leave the transit zoning in place.
Okay.
It was, we thought it'd be just easier to do an overlay for the 3 districts as opposed to changing 1 district and then adding 2 districts. It might have ended up being 3 different warrant articles, and people people would have been
Right.
upset with us.
A lot of math went into this process. And
Right.
yeah, we actually worked with a consultant, RKG Associates, through a technical assistance grant we received from the Mass Housing Partnership. And the state requires you to go through compliance guidelines, which is this massive Excel spreadsheet that you have to put in all sorts of numbers, and it computes what you need to, your basic minimums to comply based on the number of housing units, the size of your community, and then looking at where your commuter rail is and the
Okay.
distance.
Okay.
One of the big things we have to make it clear is we're not creating new housing, right? The zoning just requires us to allow for it. It doesn't, it doesn't really matter what's on the site currently. It matters what could be built there if the site were vacant. We had to exclude municipal land and wetlands and things like that. So it was really important and helpful to have that consultant advise us on it, because it's a pretty complex issue,
Right.
result.
Right.
And we should probably get into where the 3 zones are.
Yeah, let's
and,
take a look. Let's
yeah.
take a look. We have some slides we can show folks at home. Okay.
Yeah, so this is, so we have 3 total sub-districts, we call them, and this one, the first one, we're calling the Gleason Street sub-district. It's composed of almost 60 gross acres, comprising of 3 lots, and a majority of it is already taken up by Westborough Village, which is a transit-oriented village project that was constructed on that lot. And so, like I said, a majority of it is already taken up by multifamily housing. And just a quick side note, Westborough has a healthy amount of multifamily housing, so it did make it a little bit more difficult for us to find areas where we could place this where there isn't already multifamily.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think Westborough has been really ahead of this. We passed that transit village zoning, 25 years ago?
Right, it was a long time.
And we've gotten quite a few multifamily units. And I think that transit village, in my opinion, was kind of the forerunner for this zoning act for the whole state. I mean, we got an award from the state for that.
Right, it was really forward thinking of us.
I don't want to take credit for the Housing Choice Act, because I'll get nasty emails. But the point is that we're well
kind
ahead
of
of the curve
preparing
on
for
this.
that,
So,
sure.
Right.
so I don't necessarily think that this zoning change is going to have a huge impact on us. The second district that we're looking at is Turnpike Road, and we're calling this Turnpike Road A because there's another district on Turnpike Road.
Sure.
This is where the park apartment buildings is, right next to Target ball fields, baseball fields. Another multifamily project that was
40B.
built under 40B, which is a whole nother complex state law that I don't want to get into today.
Right.
But again, that's already built out with multifamily housing, so unlikely that it would be torn down and rebuilt.
Right.
But it will allow us to comply with the law.
Right,
So-
satisfies that.
And then the last is District 3, which is Turnpike Road B, which comprises of what is Arrive Westborough, which is a multifamily development that was constructed in the 70s. And so it's highly unlikely that that would be ever demolished and replaced. But this essentially allows for multifamily by right in that area, just like the other areas. Whereas right now, that is in the Highway Business Zoning District, similar to District 2, where multifamily is allowed right now anyway, but under a special permit. So we're just changing it to only be a site plan review.
Okay.
So I should note, all of these zones have affordable housing unit requirements.
I was about to ask about that.
So
Yep.
if someone did tear down Arrive and rebuild it, well, first of all, it couldn't be 8 stories. Again, we have a 4-story max height, but they would have to put affordable housing in, which I don't believe there's affordable units in that project now. So I think that's a good thing. Unlikely to happen, but We've tried to stay with over the past 5 years, we've incorporated 20% affordable requirements in all of our residential zones, and we tried to keep consistent with that in this zoning. We think it's an important standard for the town, not only to promote affordable housing, but also to maintain our affordable housing quotas that the state requires us to have.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
And actually, part of the process was to do an economic feasibility analysis
Okay.
to see if our requirement is too high for developers to feasibly be able to construct these affordable units, because
Okay.
there is a cost to it, of course. A developer can't necessarily make a return on a project that is 100% affordable unless other factors are in play. So the state was smart in that they required an affordable or economic feasibility analysis, which we did through the consultant, and they did find that we can keep our 20% affordability requirement as long as we limited the number of stories to 4 stories, because above that it changes the type of construction, which raises the cost.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
So one of the things we haven't talked about too is why we have to do this. Well, not only is it state law, but if we don't do this, the town loses eligibility for all state grants. Well, I don't want to say all state grants, but like 90% of state grants. We've gotten quite a bit of money through state grants, over the past 5 years that we wouldn't be able to even apply for anymore. So it's pretty important. Jenny can talk a little bit more about that as far as which grants we
Right.
would, programs, but it's a lot of money that we would lose an opportunity to get.
Interesting. And grants along the line of planning or across the board in town?
So it's across the board. So the state has a program they call One Stop for Growth, which is an umbrella for many different grant programs, anything from Mass Works through the Housing Choice grants. And we have received many Mass Works grants. We've received a recent Housing Choice grant, which was to give us funding to hire a consultant to help with our downtown development plan that we're currently working on. So to lose out on those grant opportunities would be a tremendous hit to us.
We got millions of dollars to redo the Otis Street intersection from a MassWorks grant. So to lose out on that opportunity, we felt that's one of the big incentives for us to pass this.
Right. And you mentioned doing it this spring as opposed to waiting till fall because it really has to be in place by December.
You have to submit your compliance package essentially to EOHLC, formerly known as DHCD, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I got it right.
That's really good. That was a lot.
Yeah,
Not even a
it's
note
a
on
mouthful.
that.
It's a mouthful. So we have to submit a compliance package to them, which includes approval from the Attorney General for
Okay.
the zoning bylaw. And so a zoning bylaw, the process is it has to go to the planning board for review. They have to issue a report on it, whether they're recommending it or not. It goes to town meeting. Town meeting votes on it. It's a simple majority vote. And if it passes, then it goes on to the Attorney General's office, who then has to approve it, which can take a few months sometimes. I believe it's up to 90 days.
Okay.
So we need to leave that gap. We cannot wait any longer than March town meeting.
Right, okay. And I guess so it feels to me like we're not rushing it, that we've got those deadlines that we've got to hit. Are there reasons that is there a reason to slow down at all? Like, do we have everything we need right now to figure this out?
I think we do. The consultant was a huge help, but it's important to realize that all of these zones are already occupied by multifamily housing. So,
Is there room on any of those zones for additional housing?
You would have to tear down existing buildings.
Okay, there's not
or
really
housing.
comfortable room for additional
No.
housing on
yeah,
those.
it's
Yeah.
unlikely. And again, I am a proponent of affordable housing. I think everyone knows that. But I think the town has done a lot for that. We mentioned the transit village. We've passed 20% affordable requirements in all our residential zones. We already have, we allow multifamilies in the highway business. We allow multifamilies in the downtown planning overlay. It's just that those are special permit. They're not by right. And that's the distinction here. We had to give up some control. I don't want to say control because by right doesn't mean they still have to go through a site plan and have public hearings and everything else. It's,
Right.
It's not like we're giving away the farm there, but
Right.
but we preferred to keep special permit authority in highway business and downtown because it gives us a little more leverage with a potential project that comes in.
And this isn't to say that we don't believe that there is a housing shortage. I think Westborough, just like every community in Massachusetts, is feeling the effect of the housing shortage. And so what we're doing to help with that is we're doing a housing production plan. I'm
Okay.
working with the Affordable Housing Trust, and we hired a consultant, VHB, to do a housing production plan, which will look at the demographics and projections for housing within the next 5 years so that we can better understand our needs. Do we need more senior housing? Do we need more starter homes, young families? What is the need in Westborough?
Right.
And that will help us when we're looking at the zoning to see what we really need to do in terms of multifamily. We do have a healthy amount. I know affordability is a concern of many seniors and young families. So we do need to take a look at our zoning and how can we remedy that and make housing more affordable for people.
Right.
Yeah, and as a former school committee member, you can appreciate this. Like, we saw the impact on the schools from Westborough Village and from Park. One of the things about the new law, we're not allowed to limit unit size. We're not allowed to limit number of bedrooms. Whereas the multifamily zones that we have are special permit, so that we do have some ability to direct a developer that goes in. I think there's a proposal coming in on Route 9, Lyman Street, that we have some direction on how that's going to be built and what's going to be in there.
Sure.
And so we didn't want to give up that control in this district, but we kind of have to. So we chose projects that are already in place that will hopefully minimize the impact on the town. I expect it to be very minimal impact.
Right. Excellent. All right. Anything else we need people to know about for this one?
We have a public hearing on February 6th at the Planning Board.
Okay.
Jenny will be doing a presentation to the Select Board on, do you remember the date? It's one of the February meetings.
Yes, it's the one right after February 6th.
Okay, so
The
13th.
The next
probably
Tuesday, the 12th,
13th.
yeah, 12th or 13th.
13th, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
the 13th, you're right,
and
13th,
obviously
yeah.
it'll be on the warrant. I think it's the last warrant article.
Yeah.
Where-
It is, and it's
so-
on our website, on the planning department page. I included the zoning article, the map, which shows the districts, and then some very helpful resources on what MBTA communities is, what Section 3A is describing, what our requirements are. Some very helpful links. There's even a link to Mass Housing Partnership's Data Town, which you can look up demographics in Westborough to understand, what our affordability is with housing. And then there's also a neat calculator where you can look at density and what that means. So lots of resources on there. And then if anybody has any questions, they can give me a call or send me an email, and I'm happy to talk to them.
We'll give them that information at the end of the show here so that people know where to go and visit. Well, it's been great having you. Thank you very much, Mark and Jenny. And we'll make sure people get to a town meeting. And there's a lot of things to consider, but this is a good one, and good that there's a lot of information out there for people on it, because I know that the zoning articles, they're a big deal, right? They really have a big impact on the town long term, and And it's always good to have people have information ahead of time because it can get complicated and there's a lot to consider. And so it's nice to give people some information ahead of time. I appreciate your time.
Well,
Yes,
thanks for
thank
having
you.
us in.
Yeah, thank you for having
Absolutely.
us.
Great. And thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the 01581 Let's Talk. Shelby Marshall will be back, I hope, next week. Take good care.